Good morning. My name is Steve Weber, and I am the host of the American Gumption Morning Show. There's our logos up in the American Gumption logo show and broadcasting here on Spirituality Gone Wild. So happy to be with you here. Today is Thursday, November 19th, and today is show number 73. So rolling right along. Today we have a guest, Jodi Orgill Brown will be joining us, and she's got a story of courage and overcoming and perseverance, and she's an author, and we'll get into that when she arrives at about 15 past the hour. My monologue today will be on prejudices, and I'm going to talk a little bit about, kind of early childhood memories and moving to California and learning to think about things that, maybe I had been programmed to think about in a different way. So that I'm labeling it prejudices, and we'll dive right into that in just a few minutes. Now, let's see. We have tomorrow, we have Kristen Osley, very own Kristen O, the Kristen O Show. She's on Spirituality Gone Wild on Monday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And she was a guest a week ago Monday, and she'll be coming back tomorrow. And we're going to continue the conversation we started because, as I said, then I had a list of things to talk to Kristen about, and we got to like one of them. And so there's more to talk about with her story and what she is doing every Monday night here. And she also has a show on Wednesday nights that she is the co-host of. So anyway, that'll be Kristen tomorrow. Monday, I don't have a guest at this point planning to go live, but we'll just play that one by ear. Tuesday, I have Ed Barr, and he is an environmental services expert, and he has worked in the hospital environments all of his career, and basically, keeping a hospital clean, not like the janitor sweeping the floor clean, but the operating rooms and the microscopic level cleaning that needs to happen. And so environmental services is from the hospital environment. Now, the reason why I wanted Ed to come on, two reasons, but he posts on LinkedIn almost every day, and he just has articles, and he has a very interesting collection of articles. So he's got topics that he talks about. The environment, sustainability, that's one of his major themes, but also American history. And so, and he's got two or three other little topics, and we'll get into all those. And then lastly, I want to say is Ed and I met 55 years ago in the first grade, and we went through first, second, third, all the way through eighth grade, and then high school together. So Ed is a lifelong friend. So he'll be joining us on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Stacy Redfield is going to join us, and she is the author of The Pilates Effect. So she has a Pilates studio, and she ends up, 20 years ago, opens a Pilates studio, ends up getting involved in that whole community, and then writes a book about the whole thing. And so it's, people, and I knew the term Pilates, but I wasn't, I didn't know that much about it. So anyway, I've gotten to know a little bit more about it, but she is the expert, and she's going to tell us about that community, how that whole movement got started. Mr. Pilates, I forget his first name at the moment, but Joe Pilates, let's call him Joe Pilates. I think that might be it. Joe Pilates is the, he was the guy who started it all. But there was a whole lot of other people behind the scenes, or I shouldn't say behind the scenes, that were part of the community that really ended up making it be what it is today. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday. Thursday is Thanksgiving. I may do a show. I may not do a show. I haven't decided yet, but we'll figure that out. Friday, I'm definitely doing a show. Brian Quinn is going to be joining us, and he has a brand new book out. He is the author of Crush Your Career. It's about jobs. It's about job search. So now's a good time for you to pay attention to that. He's been involved in, he's a military guy, and now he's been with a large company. And, he has a perspective on what it takes to get a job in this day and age. Crush Your Career is the name of his book. That's coming up next Friday. All righty. Now let's see. Let me just double check everything here's okay. Looks like we're in good shape. All righty. So my monologue today I'm just sorry about this, folks. I'm double checking to make sure there's no messages that are urgent coming in from our guest. Jodi hasn't shown up yet, but I expect her to be here any minute. I told her that she didn't have to be right smack at the top of the hour. All righty. Now, what else is happening? We have Crystal joining in, and she says, my ears rang when this flagged, so I thought I'd say hello. Hello, Crystal. Thank you for joining us this morning. This is awesome. We're off to a good start. All righty. Now, my monologue, prejudices. So let's define it. 3 definitions were given. Well, actually 5 or 6 definitions, but I like the first 2, and the third one I'm going to also share with you. But definition number 1, an unfavorable opinion or feeling formed beforehand or without knowledge, thought, or reason. An unfavorable opinion or feeling formed beforehand without knowledge, thought, or reason. All right, that's number 1. Number 2 definition is any preconceived opinion or feeling, either favorable or unfavorable. Interesting. It could be favorable or unfavorable, right? It's a bias is what it is, one way or the other. A bias could be a good thing or a bias could be a bad thing. And then finally, unreasonable. Dictionary definition number 3 of prejudices, unreasonable feelings, opinions, or attitudes, especially of a hostile nature regarding an ethnic, racial, social, or religious group. So that's when we think about prejudices primarily. I think we think about, certainly racial, social, religious, but, going back to the whole idea of a prejudice, it's really a bias. It's an unfavorable opinion or feeling formed beforehand. So it's like it's almost one of those subconscious things that we somehow have decided, and the body reacts in a certain way, and that's our belief and our bias towards something. All righty, now, when we go to the grocery store, we show some prejudices because we go down the produce aisle and we become very discerning about what type of fruit we're going to put or vegetables we're going to put into our basket. And, like the bananas, do we take the bruised and brown bananas, or do we take the yellow ones or with a little bit of a hint of green inside of them? Yeah, of course we pick the ones that look like they're ripe and they're ready to go, and or they're not quite ripe, and and the ones that are overripe, we leave them go unless there's nothing else left and we're really hankering for a banana. So anyway, we show a certain kind of bias or prejudice just as we go down the grocery store. Now, as a child, I remember being, noticing differences. I grew up in suburban Philadelphia, and when we went down into the city, I saw people of different color, different origins, and I remember I was taught from a young age, there's people no different than us, and yet there was a difference, and so there was no openly. I was not trained in any kind of or taught to believe it was different, but just the fact that there was these differences and they were noticed and saying there's no difference. Well, there was a difference. And so anyway, that was a little bit, retrospectively, that was probably confusing to me. Now, when I went to California in my early 20s, there were brown people, there were people of Asian origin, there were people from Mexico, there were people, African Americans. California is a melting pot like there is no other melting pot in the world. Well, I shouldn't say that because I haven't been over the world, but California is a melting pot. And it was certainly different than the environment that I had been living in the first 20 years of my life. And so I remember I made a decision that I wanted to actually stop paying attention to the differences because, I was like busy judging and labeling and, this person's this person's that. And, so I at that point, I realized that I had, even though I didn't feel like I had a bias or a prejudice, I certainly did. Because of just being aware, just noticing. And so I thought, okay, let's not notice so much. And what's Martin Luther King say? He dreamed of a world where, people were judged by their character rather than the color of their skin or by their differences. And so anyway, in my early 20s, I kind of awakened to the idea that, gee, I do have, just the mere fact of noticing all the time was a certain prejudice. All right. So now, so I become Forrest Gump at about age 37, and I start cutting my hair like this every week for the rest of my life. Well, maybe not for the rest of my life, but up until this point. And so anyway, now one thing that's different about me is my left ear. It sticks out further than my right ear. My right ear kind of lays flat and my left ear sticks out. And certainly I never had long hair, and so it wasn't like I hid it, but and over the years, I kind of, noticed it, but it wasn't until then that it really became more pronounced. And the fact that, gee, that left ear sticks out, this sticks out further and this one kind of lays flat. And, what's that all about? And I remember kids would come up, this didn't happen very often, but it would happen. Kids would come up and go, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with your ear?" And the parents would freak out, and they're like, "Don't say anything about his ear," and I thought it was kind of funny, and I ended up telling the story that I say when I was little, my mother, I didn't listen to my mother, and she grabbed me by the ear one day, and she pulled really hard, and it never went back. And kids would like, "Oh my gosh." And I was just, making up a tale. I was just fibbing. I was telling a story that I thought was kind of funny. But I also realized pretty quickly that it was a little traumatic to kids and it wasn't a good story for me to be telling. So I kind of toned that down and didn't tell that after I told it, 50 or 100 times. And then I went, you know what, this isn't really a good story. But anyway, it was like, okay, so kids, they would notice it and they would just say it. They didn't care. And the parents would freak out. And so there's things we talk about and there's things we don't talk about. And, I think they all fit into that realm of prejudices. Now, when I was sitting on the bench, one of the things that I would do is I would greet everybody. And it's funny. I think about this now. I shook hands with everybody. I shook hands with 1,000 people a day. And, there was no fear of COVID or other disease. There were people, they were hacking and coughing, and I still shook their hand. And, I rarely caught a cold. I was outside. I told myself, or I said to, I'm out in the fresh air, and, I was just a healthy person. And, anyway, so it was just a funny, different time compared to today where, we got to keep a distance and no touching and maybe hitting elbows with each other. So anyway, I would shake hands with everybody. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this story is that every once in a while, I would shake hands with somebody and there would be some kind of there'll be some kind of a thing wrong with their hand, like they were missing a finger or they were part. And it was like, I grab it and I flinch. And I caught myself, and I'm sure these people were used to it, but I wasn't looking. I didn't have any warning because I'm looking at them in the eye. And so anyway, when I would shake hands with them, I would flinch. And so anyway, that got me thinking, when I see somebody of a different race, do I flinch? When I see a woman, do I instantly behave differently? When I learn someone's a different religion, do I think of them differently? And I'm a single guy. I look on dating sites. I see lots of women, and there's an interesting phenomenon. There's women who say, if you support our current president, the one who's probably not going to be our president in a few weeks, if you support him, you do not contact me. And yet I don't see the other way around. So there's this prejudice, there's these biases that we have. And it's just interesting to watch and observe. And I hope we're not becoming more of a society that is not being accepting of other people just because they're different, just because they have different beliefs. So it's a very interesting time that we live in. And when someone looks different, do we make judgments? Do I flinch? And I'd say, yes, I do. And I just wanted to leave that there for now. So anyway, that is my monologue. Prejudice is, it's a weird thing. It starts at an early age, and how do you overcome it? How do we learn to just be accepting and be in the present moment? That's my goal. That's what we're working for here. So we'll see how that goes. Now, I do see that our guest has arrived in the green room, and so we are going to bring her on, and let's just make sure she's ready to go. I think so. Jodi Brown, are you in the studio? How are you doing this morning?
I'm in the studio and I'm fantastic.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Jodi, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Thank you for being my guest. When we invite a guest on, I like to read a little bio intro, and then I like to play a theme. It's called the American Gumption First Time Guest Welcoming Theme. So if you will indulge me, I'll read your bio and welcome you, and then we'll play that music, and then we'll get into a nice conversation.
Sounds great.
All righty. So in a world with 7 billion people speaking 6,500 different languages, how can one person make an impact? When you speak the language of changing lives, no translation is required and no megaphone is needed. Jodi Orgill Brown is an interactions expert who has dedicated her life and her career to helping others through speaking and training, executive nonprofit management, and writing, author of 3 books. Her memoir, The Sun Still Shines, is a multiple award-winning book and an Amazon bestseller and prime reading book. She earned a master's degree in organizational communication and leadership from the University of Utah and a bachelor's degree in public relations from Brigham Young University. And she is a CFRE certified nonprofit consultant. Jodi has learned about life and death from 2 very different experiences. First one, battling a brain tumor, and parenting 4 wonderful children. She is hoping to survive both of those. Jodi Orgill Brown, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Thank you for being part of the show this morning.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Let me play this song and then we'll get into it.
Okay. Love it. It makes me want to stand up and play the piccolo.
Have you ever had a marching band welcome you to a show before?
Not quite like that, no.
Are you a piccolo player? Did you play in the marching band?
I didn't play in the marching band, but I did play piccolo in the band all through high school and junior high.
Oh, awesome. Well, I was a woodwind player myself.
Oh, nice.
So us woodwind people, we have something in common.
That's right.
Hey, you said that, being the mother of 4 children has been a challenge. Tell us about that. What, every parent has challenges, but how have you been challenged by being a parent?
I think being a parent has been a challenge for me because as a mom, you end up going through many different phases in life, and many of those change how you feel about yourself. Because I went from being someone who was very much a get her done girl, and I studied what I wanted to in college. I was having a career. I was doing all of the things that I'd always been taught I could do. And then I started having kids, and all of a sudden I stopped being Jodi, Orgill Brown, and I started being Trendon's mom and Lindy's mom. And I felt a little bit like I lost some of my identity, and the person who I had been developing for this, 25 years, all of a sudden she was gone in an instant, and this other person who I barely knew replaced her. And of course, that didn't truly happen. I was still me, but I stopped being able to do many of the activities I had gotten used to. I temporarily lost my hobbies and interests because I had these little kids and what they were doing, they became my hobbies and they became my interests. And then as they got older and I had additional children, I had 2 more kids, eventually they went back to school and I had all my kids gone. Well, then I found it was another little time of identity crisis where now I was having to figure out, okay, who am I now that my kids are back in school and I am quote unquote me again, but I've been out of the picture of my normal life for, 15 years. So it was just a challenge in the sense that it was hard to maintain myself during that period of time, not to mention all of the normal challenges that you go through as a parent of 4 children, learning to the things you should and shouldn't do as a parent, realizing that each child is very different, even though you may have birthed them all, they are all very different, have very different personalities, and you really had to discover parenting all over again with each child because each one needs specialized attention and care. And you don't really do one thing for all of the kids. You really have to make it a personalized journey and figure it out along the way every single time.
Yeah, I imagine it's really the ultimate selfless act being a parent. I've never been a parent, so I don't know this, but I've witnessed, I've watched, I can't imagine anything being more selfless than, parenting, because it becomes, your sole focus, at different times of their development becomes about, making sure these little creatures initially survive and then, learn to navigate the world on their own. And you do give up an awful lot of what was you. So, yeah.
And at times it was so physically intense. When kids are little, you honestly have to keep your eyes on them 24/7 just to make sure that they do stay alive and stay safe. And it was absolutely intense and difficult. At the time, my husband was traveling all over the world for work, and I often found myself home alone with all of these little kids thinking, what am I doing? And, not receiving the paychecks and the kudos and all of the things that I had been used to that had emphasized that I was a person of worth and a person of value. And those things were all gone. So it took a little while to come to peace with myself and with that role and understand that I was every bit as valuable and had as much worth, if not more so, as a parent than I did when I was working. It just was of a very different kind. And the payoff is more long-term instead of the short-term. But it has ended up being the greatest blessing in my life. And my children, I had no idea I would give birth to my best friends, but indeed my children are absolutely my best friends. And they are wonderful human beings. Some of them are even quote unquote adults. And that is another adventure in itself.
Wow. Yeah. Men do not face the same challenge of trying to balance family and career that women do. Men are just assumed that they're going to, have a career, they're going to have a family, but there's not like this crossover effect that affects women the same way. So early on, before you had the kids, were you working in a career as the communications expert and what the term you use, what is it? An interactions expert. Tell us about being an interactions expert, because I've not heard that, that way before.
In my earlier years, I was really focused mostly in the nonprofit arena. Very early on in my life, after I graduated and got jobs, I realized that I started working in the high-tech industry. And after an 18-month stint in high-tech, I had an epiphany, this is not for me. This is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. I wanted to do something that I felt would be a little more personally meaningful and be able to give back to the world. So I switched from the for-profit industry and went to the nonprofit industry. So the first several years of my career were in nonprofit management, and I helped nonprofit organizations raise money, communicate with donors, run campaigns, build hospitals, implement programs, run programs for kids with autism, just all of these different things that really I felt very passionate about. And then as I got a master's degree in communication later and had several life-changing experiences, that's more when I started to focus on the interactions aspect of it, because I realized that within every interaction is an opportunity to change a life. And we don't take that opportunity seriously enough. So often, especially now during COVID, we walk by people and we don't even look at each other. We just avoid each other because we can't read each other's faces. We can't see each other's smiles. So it's almost easier if we just put our heads down and avert our eyes and, pass as strangers. But we really are missing out when we don't take the opportunity to have even a small but wonderful little reaction with someone. We are missing out when we don't take those opportunities, because opportunities to change someone's life exist in every interaction, from talking to someone at the grocery store to having a more personal and in-depth interaction. And I am quite passionate about that now, because I've had some very personal experiences that changed my life and helped me see the power in the moment.
Yeah. And I put your contact information up on the screen. I forgot to add that when we first brought you on. I'm still trying to learn to walk and chew gum at the same time. But anybody who's interested can learn more about Jodi Orgill Brown at jodibrown.com. And I've been to your website, and you have lots of resources there and information about who you are. Now, Jodi, you and I met about 5 years ago, I'm remembering, and I was at the and it was through the National Speakers Association Mountain West chapter, and it was based in Salt Lake City. I was living in Montana at that time, and I would, in the early 20 teens, I ended up making 25 trips down to Salt Lake City, 470 miles one way, and it was like a road trip, and I loved it because it's a beautiful part of the country, and I was part of the, as part of the chapter in a very active way. And then by around 2015, around the time when we would have met, I was sort of at the tail end of making that trip and being actively in part. I was sort of inactively associated the last several years. And so anyway, we met once, but we really didn't get to know each other. We said hello, and of course, your situation is unique in that you had a brain tumor. You had multiple surgeries, and it ended up paralyzing a portion of your face. And it's when people first meet you, I imagine, as I was, it's a little bit startling. And I want to, my monologue this morning talked a little bit about the fact that, people, we're startled sometimes, and we don't know how to react, and we react funny. I'll just leave it at funny. How in the world have you managed to learn to be that survivor and keep your head tall and continue to do the work that you're doing? Because I'm sure you've seen and heard it all.
I have seen and heard more than I ever anticipated. And I have sometimes been shocked at people's reactions, because on the inside, to me, and not only do I feel like I am the same person that I was before, I feel like I am a stronger person because of what I have gone through. So the fact that I feel stronger on the inside, and yet people see me as weaker or deficient or disabled in some way, just blows my mind, because I'm the same get her done girl that had 33 years of life doing things every single day and getting multiple degrees and working and getting certified and having 4 kids and all of these things that I loved doing, that always took my energy and my time in a positive way. And I still knew and do still know that in the inside, that's exactly who I am. So it was hard for me in the beginning to realize that that was not who people saw. And sometimes it was very jolting because of the terms that they would use and the things that they would say, or the way that they would look at me and then hurry and look away and try and pretend like they hadn't seen me. Or that parents would hush children away. Don't say anything, don't say anything. As though the kids would have said anything I wasn't already aware of. And so it was a little disturbing because I truly thought people were better than that. And many of them are, but there were still a fair amount of people who said very unkind things. I was at a restaurant with my girlfriend one time, just trying to have a normal lunch date shortly after I'd gotten out of the hospital. And I recognized that I was physically weaker. I was I'm always a small person, but I was very thin. I was worn down to next to nothing. I was still shuffling around as I walked, as I was trying to regain my strength. I didn't have all of the hair on my head again yet because much of it had been shaved off from my surgeries. So I recognized that there were things that looked different about me. But a gentleman came up to me, and I am calling him a gentleman because I am kind, not necessarily because he was kind to me in that moment. But he came up to me and he said, "Why are you wearing your Halloween costume so early in the year?" And I was just shocked. I couldn't believe that an adult said that to me. I mean, in front of my children, the kids behaved better than that and would never say such a thing. But here was this full-grown man who really startled me with his words. And I wish I had had something snappy to say in return. Of course, afterwards, I thought of all of the things that I should have said and all of the replies that I could have used in that moment. But all I could think of at the time was, this isn't a Halloween costume. This is the face I wear every day. And then I just turned my head, went back to my meal, and I tried very hard not to give him any more of my time or attention. But even that was hard, knowing that he was standing there and that I was trying so hard not to look at him and not to give him any more of my time and attention, because I didn't want it to be an issue. I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't want to make it something big in front of the kids. But it was definitely a jolting experience. And sadly, that was just one of many like that. And I saw a different side of humanity and came to realize that not everyone has the same set of skills and preparation in going through life. And usually when people have that kind of attitude, it's less of a reflection on the person that they are commenting on as it is on the individual themselves, and perhaps something that they were not taught, something that they are missing, something that they are self-conscious about or are lacking in some way. And now my philosophy is that I try to use that interaction to help. I try to help them see a better way. I try to show them that I'm absolutely a normal person. And even though I may look a little different, I'm the same on the inside as they are. So I try to find commonalities, similarities, interests that we share, so that they start to see me as a person, and that when they walk away from the conversation and the experience, that they have a positive feeling, not only about me, but about themselves and the interaction that we had.
You would not have felt better had you thought of something real snappy to say. that gentleman at that particular time. We both know that, I'm sure. So how do you handle today when, your skills have obviously improved so much in terms of how you deal with this, and people, I think we can agree that people just don't know how to react and respond. So how do you let them off the hook? How do you respond in a way that's gracious and helpful so that they can, learn something about themselves?
That's a great question, because I think that's one of the things people are most uncomfortable with. Is it's not that they want to make an issue, but they just don't know what to say. They don't know how to react. And my first instinct is to say, don't react any differently than you would with anyone else. If you were going through the line at the grocery store and talking to the cashier, you would have a normal conversation with that individual. even if it was just about the weather or something you were buying or something, this dang COVID that's going on in the world. You would just have a normal conversation. And when someone starts a normal conversation with me, I am more than gracious in my response. And I try to be complimentary. I try to be kind and gracious and engage and leave them again with some little positive nugget so that they're feeling good about that interaction. And if they don't start the conversation, if I can see that they are hesitant, then I jump in and start the conversation. And if there is ever, and normally there are regular conversations. It's not anything weird. It's not anything. I don't jump in and say, oh my gosh, are you looking at my face? No, I just talk to them as a normal person would talk to them. And then if I notice that there is something that they do seem upset or they have a question, I encourage them to ask the question. If there is a child who is tugging on his mom's blouse, noticing, pointing, I say, can you tell that my eye is funny and it doesn't close? Can you see that my face is crooked? Can I tell you what happened? Would it be okay if I told you a little story? And when I take the opportunity to be proactive like that, to notice it rather than them being the ones who are having to point it out, it almost always lets the parents off the hook. It fulfills the interest of the child and then gives me an opportunity to share some little bits of wisdom along with a tiny bit of my story, which essentially the only part I share is just that I had a tumor in my brain. And for really young kids, I just talk about it that I was sick, but my sickness occurred in my head, and that in the process of trying to get better and remove it, that, my face was paralyzed and now it doesn't work. Think of someone who's in a wheelchair, whose legs don't work. That's the same thing that I have, only mine is in my face. But, and this is the best part, I always finish by telling them that I'm the same as they are. And just like you have freckles, but I don't have freckles, we're all a little bit different and we're each unique, but we're the same on the inside. And I really try to use it as a learning opportunity. And if nothing else, hoping that they won't be afraid next time they see someone who is different. That when they see that person who is hobbling with the cane or has one leg or has a disease that causes, their skin to look different or whatever it is, that they will look at that person and think of their freckles or think of that conversation that we had and realize, okay, they might look a little different, but I bet they're just the same as me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm going to share, do a screen share, Jodi. This is your YouTube page. And I mentioned that we had met about 5 years ago, and then, but we were, I hope we had a polite conversation. I think, but we didn't get to know each other very well. And, from a distance, we, kind of, knew maybe what each other were doing. But then recently, you sent me the link to this and you asked if I would follow, and I'm going to encourage people to go to your YouTube page and follow Jodi. And I watched several of the videos, and you do go into great detail about, the story, and you have nice videos that were highly produced that are tastefully done and yet show the challenges that you went through. So I don't want to spend our time talking too much about that, but I do want to make sure that people know about it, encourage them to go there. And if they're, curious about what this life-changing incident did for you, this is where someone can go and find out about it. And so what are you doing, today? Because you're sharing lots of videos, you're creating new videos, and you have a message. Tell us about what your message is today, more on a professional level, the corporations that you work for, and the an interaction specialist that I'm curious about.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And thanks for showing my YouTube channel. It's actually brand new. It was just launched. So all of the videos up there are brand new. And I really created that because people asked so many questions and they wanted to know more. How did you know that you had a brain tumor? How did you find out? What was the process? What has it been like since then? And so people seemed to have this interest in just the things that were happening in my life. And so I decided, well, I might as well share this if people have an interest. So I have just recently, about 10 days ago, I actually launched that YouTube channel with those little videos. And there are many, many more to come, where I just share my journey, the lessons learned, and some powerful, impactful moments. And it's the power and impactful moments that I take to the stage when I talk to corporations, or as I, speak at big events. I really share some similar to the story of the man who asked if I was wearing my Halloween costume, but I go far more into depth and talk about the impact of these individual interactions and the opportunity that is there. Because people think of the leaders of the organization as being the ones who have all of the status, and they set the tone and the culture for the organization. And it's those leaders who really are the tops of the top. And so when you think of, Disney back in the day, you'd think of Bob Iger, or you would think of, Jack Welch and GE. You would think of those people who were the larger than life characters that represented their companies. But the reality is, your normal customers are going to have interactions with base level employees, sometimes with people who are on the lower end of the status charts, not the higher end of the status charts. And I really go in and talk about how those interactions, how when given the right information and training, the people on that level can really have the interactions that are going to be the most impactful with the customers and with the clients, depending on the kind of organization that you're in. It's those people. It's the people when I was in the hospital who came in and swept the floor and changed my IVs and took out the garbage and brought me food. Those were the people I was interacting with, not the heads of the hospital. And only once or twice a day was it even the doctors. Most of the time, it was people who would be considered to be low on the status organization chart. And yet, those were the ones who impacted my life the most. Yeah. In the 35 days I was in and out of critical care. So how can an organization take advantage of that and maximize those interactions, realizing that their customers, their clients, their patients are going to be impacted by the individuals who they come in contact with in the normal situations, at the checkout stand, loading the groceries in and out of the car, coming in and out of the clinic. Those are the people who are really going to touch the lives of the clients and patients. And how can they do a better job, and how can they have the understanding so that they better represent the organization and what the organization always wants to be and wants to stand for. But it's got to go far more than just the top of the organizational chart, because it's not those people who are interacting on a daily basis. And so by going into the depth of understanding the importance of interactions, you can see that people of any status level, anywhere on the org chart, can have great impact. And what I do is I compare status to stature, because you don't have to have great status in order to be a person of great stature. When you stand tall, have positive interactions with people, when you help someone else feel better about themselves, and you can see that they're sitting up taller, they're standing taller, they're smiling bigger because of the interaction that you had with them, that indicates that you're a person of great stature. And when you can help everyone up and down the org chart have that understanding, then you're empowering everyone in the organization, and you're making the lives of your customers and clients better every single day.
I remember, Jodi, that as I looked at the, let me reshare the screen one more time and show this YouTube channel, because I remember I did not watch all of your videos, but I did watch several. And I remember you talked about the woman who came in to give you a bath and how that interaction was not very pleasant. And then the next day, there was a male nurse who came in, and you were very apprehensive, and yet that interaction turned out to be beautiful because that person was kind and caring and gentle, and was really present with you and understanding. And so the contrast of those, and I don't remember if they were all in one video or they were two, and it doesn't matter for right now, other than to say that these videos, what I want to do is just compliment you on the quality of the videos. They're well edited, they're well produced, and so consequently they're short little snippets that tell a powerful story. And so I really do want people to go check it out and take advantage of it, and you should feel very proud of this brand new channel, because it's a quality piece of work. So congratulations.
Thank you. And the video that you're referring to there, I actually tell that story a couple of times. It's become one of my signature stories, as we say in NSA, because it is so powerful and impactful. And you'll find that story if you click on the playlist, it's the very first video in the playlist. But it does occur in a couple of the different videos, ones where I'm on stage speaking, not as much the ones that are more interview style, because it is one that I really like to tell, because for audiences, it gives them a very quick snapshot of the difference, because these two situations were very, very similar, both in which someone was coming in to bathe me when I was in the hospital. You talk about a situation where you feel vulnerable. Nothing quite like being completely exposed and feeling, the dread. I mean, no one loves I love a hot shower as much as anyone else, but I can tell you, I dreaded having a sponge bath or having someone else come in to try to bathe me when I was unable to do it for myself. And these two experiences were so polar opposite, even though the starting scenario of just needing to be physically cleaned and needing a bath, those were the same. And yet the way that it was handled couldn't have been any more opposite. Because on the one hand, a female CNA came and, yanked my clothes off, grabbed a hose with cold water, and just sprayed me down as though I was a car in a car wash. I mean, it was devastating. It made me feel like all of my humanity and dignity just dropped out from the tears in my eyes and spiraled down the drain along with the cold water droplets. And I was so physically weak, I thought, okay, she doesn't even see me as a person. I am no longer even a person. I am just a body in a bed. And if she can't see me as a person, if I'm barely even alive to her, then what am I? Is there any life left in me? And can I keep this fight any longer? And it really made me question if I could do it. If I had already lost what made me human, then maybe I was done for. And it was a very, very difficult moment, and hard for me to process, to endure, and to want to be able to keep fighting. And as you mentioned, the contrast was not very long later, several days later, when I was still incredibly weak and struggling, a young man came into my room, and I had wanted to shower that day and decided that rather than showering, if I could just get my hair washed, that would be sufficient. And I asked if he could send someone into the room to help me wash my hair. And he said, well, I could do that. His name was Lucas. I remember him to this day. I will never forget Lucas, because when he came back a half hour later with a cart full of supplies to give me what was one of the most beautiful experiences, as I stayed on my bed, but he rigged everything so that he could wash my hair and pour that warm water over and gently and tenderly massage the shampoo and conditioner into my scalp, and really gave me an experience like I was in a spa. And yet I was in the ICU at the hospital. And if you can give someone an experience like that when they are literally fighting for their life, the impact was it gave me hope, it gave me strength, it infused me with energy and made me want to get better faster, made me want to keep fighting for my life. And that is the power in one single interaction. Even if it's with someone you don't know, you haven't met, and who you can be assigned to in a job. If he can have that impact, literally a life-changing, life-saving effect, then think about what we could do if we intentionally looked at interactions throughout our days as a way to make a difference. We can honestly change lives.
Yeah, very powerful. And I thank you for, for sharing that, and for sharing, maybe that was the video that, you initially sent to me and I watched, but when I saw your YouTube channel and your website, I said, I want to connect with Jodi. And so I'm very grateful that you came on today. Let's look, can we shift gears and talk about your books?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Let's see, I can do a learning to do this. So The Sun Still Shines, 2017. So we met in 2015. You've been a busy young lady. You have published 3 books since then. But the first one, The Sun Still Shines, is really your memoir. And the subtitle, How a Brain Tumor Helped Me See the Light. Just tell us, tell people where they can find it. Of course, Amazon. But, what is the main part of this book?
The underlying moral to the story of The Sun Still Shines is that you can find light and positivity and that silver lining in any situation, even when it is what you deem to be the worst case scenario situation. Clearly, when I was in the hospital with multiple surgeries, dozens of doctors had told me I was inoperable. It was not an easy situation. It was the biggest challenge of my life. And yet there were beautiful things that were happening all around me, but I had to choose to see them. And that is a choice that we have to make every day, to be able to see through the dark clouds and to be able to realize that behind the storm clouds and that behind all of those things that are going on that seem negative, that the sun still shines, that it is still there. And that no matter how dark the storm clouds of life get, we have to remember that the sun is still shining and it's out there. And we might have to wait for the clouds to part. We might have to, travel a few miles down the road to be able to find that space where the rays break through the clouds, but it is still there. And it is a choice that we have to remember that, and that we have to choose to focus on that. And it was based on a very poignant, real experience that I had when I was in the hospital for 35 days, and I only had the opportunity to get outside the hospital walls for 10 minutes on one day. And on that one day, as I was wheeled out in a wheelchair and sat outside, and there was huge storm clouds everywhere, for just a moment, those clouds broke and the sun came through and shone down on my arms and on my face, and just warmed my whole soul. And it was a very beautiful reminder that the sun is always there. And we just need to make sure that we are looking for it, that we see it, and that we wait for that break in the clouds. So The Sun Still Shines really is my very personal journey. The kinds of stories that I've been telling today, as well as many more details. It's told in a first-person perspective, so the reader really goes on the journey with me, and they ride the highs and the lows, and they, feel the gut-wrenching moments of being told you have an inoperable brain tumor, and as well as the very poignant, tender moments and hugging and saying goodbye to my children when I left to go into the hospital. And I think it gives everyone the opportunity to put themselves in the situation and say, what would I have done? How would I have acted? What would my family have done? How would we have gotten through this? And I think that's the power in it, is we all face challenges, but they're going to be different. But through this, you can see, oh, there are ways to cope. There are ways to deal with things. And so just imagine if you could read a story and have ideas and inspiration for how you could deal with your own problems and challenges. And that's a little bit of what The Sun Still Shines does. Through the guise of telling my story, really what I'm doing is sharing ideas and tips and inspiration to help you get through your story.
Did you consider yourself a courageous person before before your diagnosis? You had a good life, and you were making things happen, but did you really consider yourself courageous? And how did you end up, like, at that moment in time, face that? How did you say goodbye to your children, knowing that there was a chance that you weren't going to even survive the operation?
Yeah, it's a tough thing to recall.
And we don't have to go into it too much, other than just, gosh.
It's a tough moment. That it was very hard to figure out what to say to the kids to begin with, because my children were young, and we knew that they knew something was going on, and they knew mommy was sick and that mommy was having a hard time. How do you explain to them what's going on? And also not scare them to death. We wanted to be able to keep their lives as normal as possible, even though our lives were being completely turned upside down. And I'm grateful to the other people in my life, my family members, my mom, my mother-in-law, my parents, and my husband, and all of the people in our neighborhood and community who really rallied to give the kids as much normalcy as possible and still take them to soccer practice and piano lessons and all of those kinds of things so that things could continue for them. And when I did have to say goodbye to my kids, I had to be at the hospital at 4:00 in the morning, the day of surgery. I was I was the only thing on the schedule for the day. I was the only patient on the day for my neurosurgeon. And so I had to say goodbye the night before. And I said goodbye when each of the children were awake. And I told them that I loved them, that I would see them again soon. And then after they were sleeping, I went in and kissed each of their little foreheads and tried very hard to believe it would not be the last time that I saw them. And I had to hold on to that because I was what I believed to be a brave person. I was a conquer the world kind of girl. And that was what I had prided myself on. So losing so much so quickly and suddenly feeling so weak was a challenge, because now I can tell you the way that I dealt with it. But in those moments, in those days, in those weeks and months when it was happening, it was a huge struggle to figure out who I was, what my identity was. Did I still have any worth? If people didn't see me as human anymore, then how did I see myself? And how did my children see me? The fact that my little guy was just 2 years old and he was scared when he walked into the hospital room, and my head was shaved and I had staples all over and my face was different. At the time, my eye was big and wide open and wouldn't close. He wouldn't come near me. And that was heart-wrenching. And it took a little while. It took a little while. And I had to start, number one, believing in myself again, which happened usually through the interactions that I had with other people, where I gained that strength and that belief that I was still worth being here and I still had something to offer. And then showing up for myself, realizing that I am still here and I want to make the best of it. So I'm going to do what I can do and show up mentally and physically every day as much as I can. And then after doing that consistently, that's when I came back to the get her done girl. That's when I came back and saw myself as a brave and conquering person. That took a while. And we all go through times in life where we question who we are and if we have the strength to keep going. And I can say, I promise you that you do. You do. You just need to rediscover that. And if my story can be a small part of giving you that go get her done attitude, then I would be honored for you to take that journey with me and to read it and to get some ideas of how you can get through the challenges in your own life.
We're at the top of the hour, so we'll have to wrap up. But I just wanted to also share that you have a couple of other books you've written since then: Rise Above Depression, Press On, and so that I'm sure is the continuation of that story. And then, and just last year you published Imperfect Paul E: The Shocking Disappearance of Polly Potty, and I'm assuming that's a children's book.
It's a children's book about bullying based on some experiences that my sons had in elementary school. And so the way that we dealt with it and helped them get through it was we made it into a story.
Very good. Well, we don't have time to share those stories now, but maybe we could have you back again sometime and continue this. I want to just go back one more time and encourage people to follow your. You just go to YouTube. Let's see here. Let me share this real quickly one more last time. There we go. So this is Jodi's YouTube channel. Go ahead, like it, follow along. She's got lots more videos coming. You see the link below, JodiOBrown.com. That is her website. Jodi, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real honor and pleasure to have you. And thank you for thank you for reaching out to me and reminding me and sharing what you shared with me, because this is an important story. You are a courageous person, and I thank you. I thank you from my heart. So
thank you from mine as well.
All righty. Well, that is the story of Jodi. My goodness, we're at the top of the hour. I need to wrap up and say goodbye, but I want to thank Jodi for coming. Again, JodiOBrown.com. Go to YouTube, find her. Please subscribe, like her page, because she's doing some great work. And that's it. This was, I was a little nervous coming into this because I knew we had to touch some things that are difficult to talk about. And so anyway, thank you, Jodi, for being as gracious and as generous with sharing your soul as you did today. Alrighty, everybody. Tomorrow, let's wrap up here. Tomorrow, Kristen O comes back. We will be there. Next week, Ed Barr, an environmental services expert. Stacy Redfield, the Pilates effect, and Brian Quinn, author of Crush Your Career on Friday. It's Halloween, or it's Thanksgiving week next week. May or may not do a show on Thanksgiving. That's okay. We'll figure it out. All right, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, Kristen O will be with us. We have a couple. Bettina checks in. Crystal checks in. Thank you so much for being part of our show. We certainly appreciate it. I'll see everybody tomorrow.